Sister Friends, in today's discussion, we'll take a look at a holistic approach to pregnancy and childbirth. Giving birth can be one of the most fulfilling and rewarding aspects of a woman's journey. It's important for us to recognize the impact that pregnancy has on the mind, body, and spirit. God designed us to be equipped for natural childbirth. With mortality rates soaring for both mom and baby, should alternative options be viable? Let's have a conversation. Hello, Sister Friends. Welcome to Sister Friends Cups and Conversation. I'm your host, Teresa Cooper. I'm glad that you've joined us. And I've got at the table with me Miss Pam Perry. Miss Pam, yes, welcome to the table today. I'm glad to have you. Miss Pam is a doula, a midwife, and another name that I can't pronounce, but I will have her explain that to you in just a bit. And then we have Catherine Young. Oh. Catherine is the Director of Care Parenting Center here in Shreveport, and she's always by my side here at the table. And then we have Crystal Taylor. Yes. Crystal Taylor is back at the table again. This is season 2, Crystal.
Yes, I made it season 2.
Yes. And Crystal is an administrative assistant at New Creation Family Church. Yes. She's an international psalmist, and she's a doula in training.
Yes. I'm a doula.
She is a doula. Okay, let me correct your mama then.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the Sister Friend table for today. And before we start our topic, I want to introduce our special cup. And this cup says, create your own calm. Yes. You are the master of your environment. Create your own calm. And so we're going to be talking about today the calmness that we need to birth babies. Yes. And we're going to talk about holistic birth. It's a necessary conversation. Yes. And so I'm glad that you ladies are with me. We got some professionals at the table today. And so we're going to get started. You know, God made us to give birth naturally. I mean, he actually, when I say he made us, he gave us everything we needed to do this thing.
Yes. Right.
Okay?
Yes, right.
And birth is an amazing experience. I wouldn't have really believed it until I saw it myself. And I saw that body just open up to 10 centimeters. Yes. And that little beautiful grandbaby boy of mine came out, and I shed a tear. Yeah. It was the miracle of life. Yes. And so we're going to talk about how to do that holistically, and what that means and what it looks like and all of that. And so Miss Pam, can you explain to us this special name that you have?
Oh, well, first off, a correction. I am not a midwife.
Okay.
I have been a midwife's assistant. Okay. I have 3 years of nursing school behind me. The one that I threw at you was Montrese.
Montrese.
Yeah. A doula is emotional and informational and physical support of a mom, nothing medical.
Okay.
That's left to the midwife and the OB. But there's a in-between, and nobody around here has ever heard of it, but it's called Montrese. And a Montrese is a doula with some medical training. Okay. And so she could take blood pressure. She could has a Doppler, and she can do fetal heart tones. Okay. If necessary, she could do a vaginal check. Those kinds of things. Okay. So
this cup is really fitting.
Yes.
Because
Very.
Absolutely.
Very.
When I read that, I was like, what the? Because that's exactly what we want to do. We want a mom to create her own calm inside of her and in her environment.
Wow. Create her own calm. So we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to spit out some statistics, and it may sound, all statistical, but, we got to do it because we have to make believers out of you. Because if you're watching and you were like me, I was like, sign me up for the first knockout. I've had 2 children, and I didn't plan it. It just worked out that they had to medically knock me out to get those babies out. Okay, that was my action plan of giving birth. Okay, and then my daughter, Crystal Taylor, she made a true believer out of me because she had severe menstrual periods.
Yes, I did.
It's so severe that
Jesus.
she would be debilitated and couldn't move, and just it was horrific. And so I was convinced that she would never, I don't even know how she was going to have a baby. Because, I mean, if she couldn't survive her monthly visitor, is what we called her, how is she going to push a baby out? But she did
That was God's prep for her.
he was preparing you. He was preparing you to create your own calm.
Yes.
And she found a place within herself to give birth naturally twice. And from that, Miss Pam, I became a true believer. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. And so in our region, but around the country as a whole, but in our region specifically, we have one of the highest C-section births. It's almost like it's on speed dial. It's what they prefer to do first. I don't know why, but that's our statistics. Black and Asian infants have the highest rate of C-section delivery in the United States. Okay. And then black women, in fact, are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white and Hispanic women in the United States. Okay. And they give some statistics, Miss Pam, saying that it could be lower quality of the hospitals, it could be a factor. They say it could be implicit bias, that could be a factor. The prenatal Medicaid coverage runs out, and so that could be a factor. They give a lot of different factors. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter what the factors are. The outcomes are just not good.
I was really surprised. We had a conference yesterday, and one of the things that I had just always assumed was that as black women became higher socioeconomically, that their birth outcomes would be better. But we found out yesterday at the conference that's not so.
So,
they can be a doctor, a lawyer, and they still have the same rate of mortality in maternal and infant as moms who are on Medicaid.
Right. So basically, the disparity crosses all socioeconomical backgrounds when it comes to birthing outcomes, and it's so severe, Miss Pam, that they said that they've coined a new. I don't know if they talk about this in the conference that you were just in. That they coined a new term called weathering.
I haven't heard
And
that.
yeah, and it's a new term, and it's their nice way of saying that the stress of poverty or the stress of implicit bias or the stress of, just the toxicity of the whole experience that, within the medical communities and where they live compared to where their hospitals are, to where the care is, that they term it weathering, that it's just, it wears them down. And so they have high blood pressure. It contributes to, what are some of the other things that contribute, diseases that show up? What's another?
Preeclampsia.
Preeclampsia.
Hemorrhage, severe hypertension.
Nutrition is a big one, and it's getting worse for everyone in the U.S. Just taking care. So I'm glad y'all are talking about holistic pregnancy as well as birthing, because your birth outcome is going to have a large connection to how you took care of yourself while you were pregnant.
Yes.
So I'm glad, because everybody hangs out at McDonald's far too much these days.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's where it comes in when we talk about holistic. It's pregnancies today are not our mother's pregnancies.
Yes.
Where they just say, just gain 25 pounds and walk a little bit and you'll be okay. Now it's more of, no, you have to, keep your weight down, but then you also have to be careful of what you're putting in your body?
Yes.
Do you have support, a community of support, people that are helping you? Because of the stress level it's in itself. If you don't have a car, if you're having to take the bus to your appointments, or if you're out of wedlock and you're pregnant, the stress of just the mom on her own, not having a support system or a husband or a partner that's joining her,
Yes.
that adds another level of stress.
I will agree. I think that one of the issues is the preconception part. Like, not even most pregnancies sometimes are like unplanned, and then some are planned. And I think that when people think about planning, they mainly think about financially, but they don't think about spiritually, mentally, emotionally, community.
It's important.
They say before you, what I was taught, before you even get pregnant, you should take a year of just cleansing your mind, your spirit, having unity with your family, with your husband, in that preconception part before you get pregnant. So detox your system. I mean, go in prayer, do a lot of things to prepare your mind and your body, because when you get pregnant in stress, that baby is going to develop in stress. So,
And it becomes their norm when your body is producing a lot of adrenaline because of stress. It does go into the placenta and the amniotic fluid, and so the baby actually thinks that the norm is that anxious state, and so you get a lot of drama queens and stuff, because I mean, to them that is their normal state. To be calm feels awkward, and so that and Crystal, for you being an all-out doula now, twice I've actually been hired preconception by moms.
and that's what I've been
so that I could walk with it. I hadn't either, but I've been hired twice to walk through that time of preparation.
A friend of mine, and I said, you want to have a baby, let's sit and talk about that preconception part. Don't call me when you're pregnant. Call me before
While you're
thinking about it, and we talk about a meal plan. We talk about how to eat right. We talk about how to have those times where you're calm and you're relaxing, and you're already talking to your body, your spirit, saying you're going to develop, you're going to carry a healthy baby, and you have that conversation with you and your husband and your supporters. So when it does happen, everyone's ready.
Right.
Mom's ready, grandma's ready, and aunties, everybody's ready, knowing that we're all preparing to conceive.
Right.
And then be in a place of peace.
Right.
You create your own calm.
Creating your own calm from the beginning. Yeah, that's good.
That's awesome.
And it reminds me of the scripture that talks about that children are a gift
Yes.
from God. And so it's almost as if you're preparing yourself to experience this gift, that God is getting ready to bless you with.
Like we do it at Christmas. We start in November preparing our house, thinking of our meal plans. What gifts are we going to get?
What the menu is going to be like.
Yeah,
Thanksgiving and
have the
Christmas.
kids writing their Christmas list, and so it is that time of preparation.
Right. So if those of you that are watching, I hope that you're picking up on this conversation. We're talking about holistic births and the importance of preparing ourselves. Not just, we enjoy the do. Like trying to making that baby, we be having a good time doing it. But once we get that exciting news and it's a plus on that little, am I pregnant? What do we do after that? What are we taking the time to create our own calm, to assess our environment, our goings and our comings, and preparing ourselves to receive this gift. And because, again, we said at the beginning that God made our bodies to do this miracle of life. I mean, we women, we bad to the bone.
And we are the stronger sex, because if men were having babies, everybody would be a one kid family.
There'd only be adoption. They wouldn't even bring forth life.
Yesterday when we were all in that same little forum they had, and I really liked the part about community.
Yeah.
Because I can remember when my kids were born, my grandmother was there, and my mom was there. So after the baby, you know, the stresses of the baby crying, my grandmother came, helped for a week. My mom came and helped. You don't see that anymore because women have gotten so independent. I could do it myself, and then we create a whole nother.
And
you
we
know,
move, and we
Right.
move so much that we
Yes.
don't have extended family around us.
Yes.
And I loved what she said yesterday, that a lot of the change that needs to take place needs to start in the church, because
Yes.
that's where we build our chosen family.
Yes.
And so I think that's a wonderful place to start, is in the church. And in that year of preparation, if you don't have a church home, that's a great time to find one
That's
and
a
get
great
plugged
reason.
in.
That's a great reason to return back to church and to have a church, because churches provide a support system. Many
yes.
times we think of all the reasons why we don't go to church anymore, and we forget that the church was the first community center, was the first community place where we could go and our kids could go, and we could not just learn spiritual principles, but life principles,
Yes.
and
And
find
share the
support
burden.
and share the burden.
You know, if your kid's over there doing something wrong, Sister Mary's going to grab him. You don't have to run. It's wonderful.
I think if someone says it takes a village
That's right.
to raise a child, it takes a village. It takes all of us, family, church. It takes the school has their part, but most definitely it takes community. Well, ladies, let's talk about doulas and midwives. They are vital, but can you all explain to us what are the outcomes? How the outcomes change when you have a doula or you have that support system, whether it's through a midwife or through a doula, assisting you in your pregnancy, what they do.
Okay. There's some studies done. Even the ACOG, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, a few years back came out with a statement paper on the positive aspects of having a doula at a birth. And first off, I want to point out, a doula is different than your OB
Yes.
or the nurses at the hospital, because your OB is not going to be with you through your labor. Your OB is called when you're at 9 or 10 centimeters, runs in, catches the baby, checks you out, and disappears. And you don't see your OB again until somewhere 3 to 6 weeks down the road.
Yeah.
They're not in there holding your hand. The nurse that you get when you go in, she may have 3 other women in labor, and so, you know,
She's gotta
a
go back and
doula,
forth.
she's
Right.
got to, and she's got to check with make sure all the medical stuff is good. Your doula is the person that's there just for
Just
you.
for you.
Just for you. And her job is to help you create your own comfort,
Yes.
to give you ideas on how to be more comfortable. Most doulas carry a toy bag. I call it our toy bag. Or I've had a couple of dads say, that thing's like Mary Poppins' bag. You keep pulling things out of
Pulling
there.
stuff out,
you
yeah.
know. But just things we've been at a birth and said, gee, I wish I had. And so we'll throw that in. We may not use it but once a year or once
Right.
every couple of years. But we have that stuff available and with us. And your doula is going to build a relationship with you. I personally loved the 2 times I was hired pre-conception. I had great relationships with those moms. I knew what their face looked like
Yeah.
when they were in pain and stuff like that. I didn't have to learn on the job. I had time to build that. We had a trusting relationship. Even if they didn't want to do something, they trusted that what I was saying was going to be for their benefit. So it gave us that.
Would you say that doulas are there to also help advocate for you?
Yes, most definitely.
Because like when you're in the middle of, when you're giving birth, I mean, you may have your significant other, your husband, your mother or your grandma there, but they're not necessarily there. They're there to console, to hold your hand, but there's sometimes there's things that you don't know that don't need to be happening. But the doula being there, it will say, well, no, she has a birthing plan, or no, they don't want that. They've made a decision not to have this.
Well, one of the things is a doula's job is not to speak for the mom.
Okay.
And so if the nurse comes in and says, well, we're fixing to, hook up your IV and put some Pitocin on you, and she and her doctor have talked about this and it's not what, It's not the doula's job to stand and jump in front of the nurse and go, no.
Yeah, you can't do
Okay.
that.
It's
Yeah.
at that point we look at the mom and
Okay,
say,
and you
okay,
provide
we've
support to the mom.
we've
To
talked
give her the
about
courage.
this. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Are you okay with them doing this now,
Right.
or do you want to have some time to think about it? Or so by directing it back to the mom,
Okay.
because in the hospital we're nobody. We're not a family member. We're not their mother. We're not their spouse. We are there for them.
Okay.
And so our direction is to them. I mean, literally, sitting by a mom and doing nothing but just stroking her can be very comforting. So your doula should always be next to you.
Okay.
And then also have the conversation with the partner. So with the father, prenatally, when you have your meeting, you know, you meet with them and talk with them before the delivery, you want to explain to them how important it is for their presence to be there.
Okay.
So if the mom can't speak for herself, the husband is there to, you know, speak in behalf of her and say, well, we already decided that we didn't want Pitocin, or pay attention. I know what I've learned now is that whenever the doctor walks in, it's very important that the father stands up and introduces himself to the doctor, or makes his presence known to the nurses, because they can just be left aside and not even get noticed. And if you're
Okay.
not noticed, if there's not a strong male presence there, and they notice there, or another advocate besides the doula, which could be a mom or a grandmother, then things can happen that wasn't planned.
Well,
And you look for little signs.
Do
and you
they have to
watch.
be? But again, beyond offering comfort, the
Yes.
doula or
Education.
midwife, they have
Yes.
some medical knowledge of
Yes.
things, but these are things that you of procedures.
Right, yes.
So there's things because tell us a little bit, Crystal, about your birthing experience. Because you had 2 children and you had them all natural,
No inducing,
no
medication.
inducing, no
Yes.
medication, and
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
and how did your doula aid you in that, in advocating for you?
Well, whenever we met, she explained to me birthing options.
Okay.
See, when you go to the doctor, they don't give you birthing options. They don't talk about, you know, you don't have to be induced. The first question they asked me at 7 weeks was, we're going to schedule you. Do you want to be scheduled? And I didn't even know what that meant. So I just said yes. So from then, that's when I with prayer, and I remember coming to my mom, was like, I just feel the Lord telling me to have a natural birth. And I remember you saying, what does that mean? I'm like, I have no idea.
Knock me out!
I have a couple of dads that actually asked that too. She doesn't want it, I'll take it.
So from there, that's when I started. My mom actually was like, well, I Googled what natural birth means, and there's this thing called doula. And so as a doula, you educate your families. You tell them what Pitocin is, or what other medication.
The pros and the cons.
Pros and the, thank you, yes, the pros and the cons of having any type of synthetic drug during pregnancy.
Okay.
And how it affects you and how it affects the baby.
Right.
And how it can prolong the labor, or how, you
Wow.
know. So we want to lower the chances of C-section. And
The chances of C-section,
Yes.
because what raises the risk of C-section?
it could be a number of things this family.
I was going to say, one of the things we talk about as a doula with our clients is something that we just call the cascade of interventions. When you don't know, you just say, okay.
Yeah.
And so literally
Okay.
the first thing that happens when you walk into the hospital is they give you one of those gowns
Right.
that, you know, show
IV,
everything
right,
in the
yeah.
back, and you know, and who wants to get up and walk around when your hiney's hanging?
Right.
And so what do? You start acting like a patient. You get in
Right.
the bed, and you don't want to get out because, like, you know,
Right.
shiny hiney's going to be there. And so once you're in the bed and you're not moving around, your labor may slow down.
Okay.
In which case,
because you're
then
not moving around.
because you're not moving
very
around,
important.
and so then that could bring on that you need a little Pitocin to keep things moving along. And because it's moving slower, well, now you're not eating and drinking, so you might also need some fluids. And so, you know, a woman that's having a baby, which is not a medical procedure, may have 4 or 5 things hanging off of her.
Okay.
Then you're not going anywhere. And so just the simple act of saying, no, I'm not going to put on that gown. I'm going to wear my own whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And not getting, you can do, in
can.
fact,
Look, you can wear your own gown. You don't have to put on the hospital gown.
and I'll tell you that,
Who knew?
and we've gone through different things. For a long time, moms wanted to wear one of Dad's great big baggy T-shirts because it was soft and it smelled like him. We've gone through different things. I'm finding right now a lot of moms go to Goodwill, spend $2 on an elastic skirt. You can put it around here and have on a elastic bra. You can pull it up here. You know, so you just do your own thing. You can even bring your own little Christmas lights to make that.
Let me ask you
comfortable
this
room.
question, because I heard this. Okay, you talk to the patient.
Yes.
You get them prepared. And then once you get in the room, the labor room, and they flip out on you.
Yes.
And they don't want to follow the protocol, what you all done talked about.
Not patients. We have
Patient, what they are?
we have clients because they're
Clients,
not
okay.
sick.
We learning all
You see, patients are sick people. Women having babies are not sick.
So okay, so when you get when you get in there with your clients, so when you get in there with your clients, and they start spazzing out, you know, because that pain
It's real.
is real.
It's real.
How do you draw them back in?
I tell you, I had the neatest experience. I had a client, and she had trauma. And with the military base, we get women, military women with PTSD.
Oh,
and we
wow.
have to be aware of that. And so this has happened a few times with me where I've had a woman who's been raped in the past, and the intensity of labor is
Wow.
going to trigger things, or abusive or something like that. That's part of what we talk about in that preparing.
Okay.
Preparing.
So it's almost like an interview. You do
Yeah,
like an extensive interview.
I had one mom, and I didn't know, and her doctor didn't know. Well, I knew, but right towards the end, because we had that last little talk, and I was like, is there any trauma in your past that I need to know about? And she said, yes. She says, I was raped, and that's why I have a female doctor. I was like, okay. We got to the hospital. Her doctor was not on call. An older male doctor
my
walked
goodness.
in the room. She jumps out of the bed, climbs up the chair in the corner,
my
and is
goodness.
standing up here.
Wow.
And so her husband and I are the only ones in the room that know what's going on.
Yeah.
Everybody else is looking at her going, what? And so that is part of that conversation and planning. But one of the coolest experiences I had about a year and a half ago, I got to go to a trauma workshop down in New Orleans. And they talked about keeping women in the present, especially if they've had any kind of trauma. And so just saying, you know, can you hear my voice? You know, can you look over there? Do you see your husband sitting there? Do you feel me petting your hand? And so just keeping them here helps them, their brain not to go back to that trauma when they're feeling pain. It's connected to trauma a lot of times.
Wow.
And so just
You have
having
to
that extra
refocus
training.
them.
Yeah.
Because there's times where you may feel like you're about to go out of yourself, because it's an out of body
because you
experience.
almost was like,
And I did, honey. When the pain, I remember at my birth when Miss Pam was there, I remember saying to her, because the pain for my birth for Lillian was totally different from DJ. DJ, I kind of just sat there the whole time and
you gotta just
hummed, and I was just like, it was more of an out of body experience, you know. Then for Lillian, I was like, wait a minute, this is way more intense. I don't know if I can do this. And I remember looking at Miss Pam and I said, dude, it's my first time meeting her. And I said, because my doula had to go out of town, so she's the backup doula. She's my angel. I said, do you believe in the power of prayer?
Come on.
Do you believe? Do you believe in the Holy Ghost? She said yes. And I said, please pray out loud. And I remember telling you and Wayne, I need y'all to pray out loud. So you kind of, when someone does that, you have to, you know, change their focus, you know.
And your mom was texting me, pray.
Yes.
Pray for my baby.
But normally when you're at that point, when you're like, I can't take it anymore, when we got to the hospital, I was 8 centimeters. It's time. It's time. You know, it's like that.
And almost every mom at some point will say, I can't do this. And that is truly the point where you go, this is great. Most people are going, what? But it is. That's because you can't do it
You can't.
in your power.
In your power.
You have to let go
Yes.
of the brain
Yeah.
and the control,
Yes.
and then just follow what your body's
That's
telling you to
good, Miss
do.
Pam.
And we
Yes.
don't do that in our society. We stay in our
I was
brain.
telling Miss Pam, because Miss Pam teach classes at the center I'm at in Crystal, but I was telling her she could be encouraged because when we do the intakes on the young women when they
Yes.
come in, and I talk to them about the labor and delivery class and the breastfeeding. And I tell them we have doulas certified. They say, oh, that's the way I want
Right.
to go. Younger women now,
Yes.
a lot of them are not looking into medication. They want to breastfeed and
Right.
they want to do doulas.
Because and the recovery, if you're watching the recovery, the bounce back is a lot quicker. And if I want to say this too, if you live in Louisiana, you really need to be aware of this.
Yes.
All that we're saying, because Louisiana is number 44 out of all the 50 states in maternal mortality. Okay, and so we got a high mortality rate in this state.
One of the things too, y'all learn to ask questions.
Yes.
And this is not just ask questions because, you know, we learn through experience, and doulas have more experience. So but if you go in and ask your doctor and say, well, I think I want to have a natural birth.
Yes.
Are you okay with that? There's not a doctor out there that's going to say, oh, no, that's just all wrong. Well, there may be a few.
Well,
I was going to say there may be a few. Yeah, there may be a few.
Like a natural,
Yeah.
like
Shut it down.
a birth plan.
Yeah.
They look at you like,
But
Yeah.
learn to ask more pertinent
Yeah.
questions like, in the last 6 months, how many unmedicated births have you attended?
that's a good question.
Because I went to one mom's birth and she said, oh, my doctor's all for this. The last 4 weeks, he was giving her a lot of pushback on what she wanted to do. After her birth, which she had some horrible tearing, the doctor said to me, this was the first unmedicated birth I've been at since I was in med school.
Yeah.
And so learn to ask more pertinent questions like, how many have you attended in the last year or
that's
6
a very
months?
That's a very good question to ask. And then I will also say, don't fear the word doula, because I had a woman say, well, I don't want to call you because I don't want to have a natural birth. And I was like, that's not the job of a doula, is to force you into having an unmedicated birth. Our job is to ask you, give you the options, and then let's talk about ways to not go into the emergency part. So don't fear the word doula, because we're here to support you in whatever your birth plan is.
And I've been hired for C-sections,
Right.
you know, to help, because moms don't realize this. You even have options in C-sections. If it's a planned C-section, you have options in.
Doula for it all.
So if you're watching, you just heard it all today. You can have a doula even for a C-section. Really what we're saying is you are your best advocate, sister friends. You advocate best for your health. And so we want to help you to look at all the holistic options that you have to improve your outcomes. And I want my sister friends in Louisiana, I want the best for you. And we're at the bottom, but we're going to change that narrative, and we're going to get better outcomes, and we're going to save our babies, and we're going to do it naturally because we were built for this.
Yes.
Amen. We were built for this. We're praying for you. We're cheering for you. You can do this, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you. Sister, prayerfully, we have given you some insight into the holistic approach to pregnancy and childbirth so that you can make an informed decision in choosing the pathway for your birthing experience. In all things, be prayerful and allow God to direct your path. We love to hear from you, especially your prayer requests. Don't forget to follow us. We like to recognize one of our sponsors, the local Geico office in Shreveport. You can receive a quote on your auto, home, or life insurance by calling them at 318-742-3600. See you next week.